As a kid, Jurassic Park has always fascinated me, from the haunting way they seemingly clone their dinosaurs to the dark corridors and spaces held within its facilities. What secrets did they hold? What did we never get to see hidden in the darkness? Well, I went searching for these answers, and well, I found myself looking into the abyss of haunting Jurassic Park media, and what I found, well, changed my view on the franchise forever. You see, most of it was hidden from us, or only subtly told in the novels and films. Now, don't get me wrong, some of it was blatantly shown, and I will explore that later on. But other things, well, you really had to look and dig deep to find this stuff. One such thing was the DX virus, or as it's known, Disease X. This was a virus which was never shown on screen, but featured very briefly in the novel. And I know this sounds crazy, but it's very akin to Primal's version of the Plague of Madness. But in summary, it's one of the most horrifying pieces of dinosaur media in recent history, hell, even of all time, and the fact that something like this existed in Jurassic Park blew my mind, so I had to continue researching it, and what I found was completely shocking. Not only did a disease like the Plague of Madness exist in Jurassic Park, it literally ravaged the entire population, and was an overarching story point in the Lost World. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't turn the dinosaurs into zombies like we see in the Plague of Madness, but it does a pretty damn good job, and the result is exactly the same. They both result in death. Now, that's all I'm going to say on this piece of media, because I did a huge video on that, and I recommend checking it out after this. And to me, that was pretty tame into what I'm going to talk about next, because this next piece of media really did scar me when I first heard about it. You see, this isn't even mentioned or alluded to at all in the films, and only crops up in the novel. And well, here it is. I'm going to give it to you right now. Now prepare yourself, because I'm going to read this directly from the script. Here we go. The tropical rain fell in great drenching sheets, hammering the corrugated roof of the clinic in Anasako. It was nearly midnight, the power had been lost in the storm, and the midwife Elena Merles was working by flashlight when she heard some squeaking, chirping sounds. Thinking that it was a rat, she quickly put on a compress on the forehead of the mother and went into the next room to check on the newborn baby. As her hand touched the doorknob, she heard the chirping again, and she relaxed. Evidently it was just a bird flying in the window to get out of the rain. Costa Ricans said that when a bird came to visit a newborn child, it brought good luck. Elena opened the door. The infant lay in the wicker basket, swaddled in a light blanket, only its face exposed. Around the rim of the bassinet, 3 dark green lizards crouched like gargoyles. When they saw Elena, they cocked their heads and started curiously looking at her, but did not flee. In the light of her flashlight, Elena saw the blood dripping from their snouts. Softly chirping, one lizard bent down and with a quick shake of its head, tore a ragged chunk of flesh from the baby. Elena rushed forward screaming, and the lizards fled into the darkness. But not long before she reached the bassinet, she could see what had happened to the infant's face. She knew the child must be dead. The lizards scattered into the rainy night, chirping and squealing, leaving behind only bloody free-toed tracks like birds. But we're not finished there. There's plenty more coming up. And I'd like to finish this section off with another bit of media from the book, and how it's portrayed completely different to the films. And that is Dennis Nedry's death scene, and it's far more gruesome than we initially thought. Now, it's worth mentioning here there are 2 versions of Dennis Nedry's death, the novel version and the film version. I want to cover the novel version first so we can get that out of the way, and then continue with the film version. So in the novel, Dennis Nedry again does get attacked by a dilophosaurus, but it's a different scene setting. The dilophosaurus isn't like the one we see in the movie. In fact, it's several times larger. Now, the dinosaur blinds Nedry with its venomous saliva, rips his stomach open, causing his intestines to spill out, and then crushes his head in its jaws. A far more gruesome death than the original Jurassic Park. Now, Nedry's remains in the novel were found later on by Muldoon and Gennaro, and he was being devoured by a group of scavenging compies. Now, Gennaro does ask what they should do with his body, and Muldoon basically just states that they have more important things to worry about and left it where they found it. His remains were presumably destroyed when the entire island at the end of the novel was napalm bombed by the Costa Rican Air Forces. That solves the mystery of Nedry's body in the novel. Done and dusted. But the film, however, has far more backstory and mysteries than meets the eye. And believe it or not, there are actually references to Dennis Nedry's family in other iterations of Jurassic Park, but that's something I'll talk about later. Now, as for the film, the last time we see him is him being mauled to death in the Jeep, but that isn't the case throughout the franchise. Now, there was a canon website called the DPG, which is the Dinosaur Protection Group. On this website, it had various information information, which was all canon to the Jurassic franchise, and one of these bits of information was the investigation into Dennis Nedry and his espionage. There's a report on file which goes through Dennis Nedry and his backstory, and also tells us that there was a cleanup operation in 1994. Now, looking at this very sensitive document, you can clearly see that they investigated the premeditated attack on the park systems, and it was sabotaged by Dennis Nedry. Now, you can pause here and have a great look at this information because there's some great lore in this document, but I want to draw your attention to the location of the deceased employee. And what it actually says is the remains of blanked out, which is obviously Dennis Nedry, were discovered during the 1994 cleanup located outside tunnel leading towards the east dock. Post-mortem concludes the cause of death as, and it's blacked out. Now, what is extremely interesting is the fact that this is canon to the Jurassic franchise. So canonically, we have now proven that Dennis Nedry's body has been recovered. But what actually happened to it after that? Surely his family will come looking for him, and we do have two relatives on file which we know about. 4 years after this incident, Peter Ludlow took the position of CEO at InGen with the proposal of making Jurassic Park in San Diego. It's in this film, The Lost World Jurassic Park, which is in 1997, Ian Malcolm criticizes Peter Ludlow for twisting the facts surrounding the deaths of 3 people.
You signed a non-disclosure agreement before you went to the island that expressly forbade you from discussing anything you saw. You violated that agreement.
Yeah, I did, and you lied. You twisted the facts surrounding the deaths of 3 people. There aren't any versions of the truth, and I'll tell you something, InGen can't keep spewing out.
InGen is my responsibility now, Doctor, and I will jealously defend its interests.
In a few weeks' time, it'll be long forgotten. Not by me.
Which he quotes Donald Gennaro, Ray Arnold and Robert Muldoon. Why it's not specifically stated, it is clear that Dennis was not one of the deaths Ian was talking about, probably because Ian was unaware of the death or InGen had actually covered it up. And why would they do that, I wonder? Well, let me continue. Now, in the deleted scene in The Lost World Jurassic Park, Peter Ludlow mentions the families of Gennaro, Muldoon and Ray Arnold suing InGen for their deaths, but he does not mention the Nedry family, which is extremely odd. But one could argue and say possibly that Nedry had no family. If even that was the case, there would have been an investigation and compensation would have been given somewhere. And let's not forget, we do know Dennis Nedry has 2 relatives on file. We have Diane, who's his sister supposedly, and Danny Nedmeyer, which is his nephew. Both of these, however, are considered non-canon and they're from the Lego franchise, so I'll not be counting them in this entry. Now, we know InGen tried to cover up the Jurassic Park incident because it's mentioned directly with Ludlow and with Ian Malcolm. But what is interesting, the fact of Dennis Nedry either A, never knew about his death, or B, decided to not sue. However, the likelihood of them not knowing that Dennis Nedry went missing on Jurassic Park is highly unlikely because the report of the 1994 cleanup eventually comes to light. So any surviving relatives at this stage would 100% be on InGen's case and suing for their money, but there is a huge problem and reason why they wouldn't. Let's think back for a second. Dennis Nedry was directly responsible for the events at Jurassic Park, not to mention he was conducting industrial espionage, which InGen could have sued him for anyway, and for the destruction of Jurassic Park. The likelihood is his family did contact InGen with intent to sue. InGen, on the other hand, countered this with a claim saying he was probably responsible for his own death. And not only that, he is the one who shut down the systems, resulting in the dinosaurs escaping, and conducted industrial espionage in itself, which was illegal. Now, I'm no lawyer, but in a court of law, I would find it very difficult for Nedry's family to sue InGen for something he'd created himself and was conducting espionage. Now, this next one is genuinely quite haunting because it's real, and many people never even knew it existed despite walking right past it. You see, this was an attraction in Universal Studios Orlando, Florida. It was only open for a few years, but then got abandoned and completely closed off, and was just left to rot. The eeriness of this zone and place is unreal. Completely overgrown, not maintained, and was literally yards away from a bustling theme park, but no one knew it existed. There's something awfully eerie and off about a place which should be full of people, yet is completely abandoned, but yet literally only meters away is a bustling theme park, but all these people there are completely unaware of its existence, unknown as to what is going on behind all this foliage. And that to me is quite eerie and creepy. And while we're on the subject of abandoned places, let's talk about something else which was abandoned and is classed as a lost piece of media for Jurassic Park. In itself, it's quite haunting, and I am talking about the lost media of Jurassic Park 4.
In early 2004, before Salis was on the project, a draft was being doctored that allegedly included dinosaurs trained as super soldiers, while the series' technical advisor Jack Horner claimed that the Mohanan script laid out an evolutionary connection between human and dinosaurs, hinting that a dino-human hybrid could be the grand payoff for this idea. In any case, regardless where that concept came from, is this vision which lives on in the minds of so many people and Jurassic fans. The dinosaur hybrids in this script are fused with human DNA and dog DNA to ensure a perfect balance of fierceness, intelligence and obedience, combined with strength and speed. Soldier Harris is commanded by the Swiss to train these hybrids for rescue missions and also to assassinate drug dealers. On top of their weaponized teeth and claws, the dinosaurs are even given armored suits to wear in their missions, which entails fighting both terrorists and drug lords. Now obviously to a Jurassic fan this is a far out concept with dinosaurs taking on drug lords and war and everything else in between. And this is only the start. As more widely circulated than the script itself, there's some official artwork that leaked in 2012. Although Sales himself confirmed his leaked scripts are genuine, concept art later provided that the hybrid idea was actually under serious consideration and not merely the product of an unpolished second draft. A further concept image released in 2016 depicted a green hybrid named Raptor Man, who sported an arm cannon. At some point this was a very real idea and seriously considered for Jurassic Park 4 as they were going ahead with production.
Despite how grotesque and horrible looking they are, nothing compares to this next dinosaur. It's the only one of its kind featured in Jurassic Park media, and believe you me, this is a thing of nightmares. Now immediately you're thinking it's got to be something huge, something which would be far scarier than the Indominus Rex or the Scorpius Rex. Well, not really, it doesn't have to be huge. You see, this is a parasitic dinosaur we're talking about, which we know was in Jurassic World. You see, the official DPW Twitter account, or X as it's called now, confirmed a sighting of this dinosaur in the woods, and it actually resembles the one which gave me nightmares, the one from Jurassic Park the game, which we know wasn't canon, but now because of this new evidence, the design will be. And not only that, this dinosaur was cut from Jurassic World Chaos Theory as an assassin dinosaur and would have been used as the same purpose as the Velociraptor pack. I think you've guessed it, the troodon. And this is the reason why you wouldn't want them running around Jurassic World, because just one bite, like I said, paralyzes you, and then comes the fate, which I believe is probably worse than death. But we're only just getting started on the real horror of this clone species. The nightmare reputation can be owed to its venomous bite, which would cause hallucinations, and in some cases the victim would become extremely violent and attack nearby individuals. Unless the infection was treated by an extremely powerful tranquilizer, the victim will go into a series of convulsions, seizures, and the final stage of paralysis and brain death. But this is only the start of the troodon's hunting tactic. Using this venom as their primary weapon, they would hunt by biting their victim and then fleeing, but stalking their victim as it suffered from the effects of the venom. That is when the troodon would lay its eggs. Now, I did say the troodon were nightmare horrors, and this is the next part, so if you're squeamish, I would recommend skipping this part. When a troodon was about to lay eggs, she would kill one of her prey as usual, but instead of eating her kill, she would instead partially bury it in a secluded area. While the victim was still paralyzed, she would rip open her victim and lay eggs in them, so in a human, it would be the abdomen. It is presumed that the victim's body is used to provide both body heat and food for the hatchlings, which would proceed to eat the corpse from the inside out. This method of rearing young is like that of a spider wasp species, with a clone troodon being the only non-insect that uses this method. But we're only really just getting started with the troodon. Upon troodon's creation, Dr. John Hammond, founder of InGen, did not add troodon to InGen's list because it did not fit his vision of Jurassic Park. Ultimately, Hammond ordered these clones to be destroyed along with the records of their creation. But the doctor who created them instead lied to John Hammond and secretly kept the troodons on the island in the quarantine pens to continue studying them. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting. Now, when Dennis Nedry disabled Jurassic Park's security systems in order to steal dinosaur embryos for Lewis Dodgson, he disabled the quarantine pens containing the troodon pack as well, allowing them to roam freely, a massive mistake. take. Now, before we go any further, it is worth pointing out that this lore comes directly from Jurassic Park the game, although troodons are technically canon because they're part of Jurassic World the live tour, and Jurassic Park the game is considered soft canon. They're also part of Jurassic World Evolution. The first action of the free troodons was handing Nema Krez, a woman who Nedry was supposed to meet at the East Dock to give him the embryos. If it wasn't for Dr. Hardin, she would have died a few hours later. The next day, they attacked several people, including Daniel Cafaro, who was the pilot of a helicopter. The troodons dragged his body to a room inside the geothermal power plant where a female laid eggs inside his chest. Due to the nature of the troodons liking the dark, the big bulbous eyes actually glow in the dark, so it's an easy way to see them. This is how Nema was able to see the troodons in the darkness. And does this not look exactly like the picture we see on the Dino Tracker website? It does. And the fact that they were meant to be cast in Jurassic World Chaos Theory tells me they are definitely out there. And I, for one, couldn't think of a worse fate than being paralyzed, eaten alive, and then having eggs laid inside of you, waiting for them to hatch. Ugh! And this next bit of media is exactly the same. It's completely lost in time, was never even released, but yet we found it. That's right, the first ever hybrid dinosaur before Jurassic World, the Ultimasaurus. This to me shows that InGen had other plans than simply cloning dinosaurs. They planned on gene splicing. Well, we know that happens in Jurassic World because of the hybrids, but before that, in Jurassic Park, they had them plans themselves, and this horrible, grotesque creation proves it. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to say one thing. This was a cancelled toy line, a lost piece of media, if you will. It never made it onto the shelves. But believe it or not, there are extreme similarities between Ultimasaurus and the Indominus Rex, which is obviously the hybrid from Jurassic World, especially in terms of purpose. We can only theorize that InGen was going to mess in gene splicing with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, a Triceratops, Velociraptor, and Anki. Truly an unethical thing and horrific thing to do to any living animal, let alone put it on display to the public in Jurassic Park. And let's face it, we all know how that turned out with just normal clone dinosaurs, if you can even call them normal. All of these pieces of media are haunting in their own right, whether they're forgotten about, abandoned, grotesque, or just all unethically wrong. But they all share one thing in common. They truly are haunting pieces of Jurassic Park media. And with that, I'm shutting down the power in the park and I'm going to wait in the control room for rescue. Surely someone will come. They have to. Right? I'd also like to thank my YouTube members who are on screen now who help make these videos possible, so thank you guys. And an extra special thank you to DVM Wannabe 1018 and Hammer Time VR, who are research executives in the park. And a thanks to you for watching till the very end. I really do appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.